In this video, you're going to learn new workflows for using Monograph's time off and monthly staffing features, built exclusively for AE firms. This session is best suited for Monograph customers who are admins, principals, and managers with access to setting policies and managing firm staffing. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button to get the newest videos from Monograph. This video covers two new features built exclusively for AE firms: time off and monthly staffing. With time off, you can request, accrue, track, and manage paid time off in Monograph. In monthly staffing, you can forecast staffing issues weeks ahead fast and rebalance hours where needed. Click the links in the video description or scan these QR codes with your phone to learn more about each new feature. If you're new to Monograph and exploring if it's a good fit for your AE firm, visit monograph.com or scan this QR code with your phone to get started. Now let's get on to the session.
Welcome everyone to this session that Ashish and I are holding for workflows on time off and monthly staffing. I'm going to show you next what our agenda is going to be for today. Next slide, Ashish. This webinar specifically has been designed with admins in mind. So we're going to be talking about time off. We're going to be talking about staffing. We're going to have a Q&A section at the end. But everything that you'll see will be with an emphasis on, like, as an admin, how do I use this? Your hosts today are myself and Ashish. I am the Vice President of Customer Experience at Monograph. I probably know a good portion of you, or we've spoken before, but at some moment I've probably engaged with every single account. So I'm glad to see so many folks participating. And Ashish, who is here, is our new Chief Product Officer. He is in charge of leading Monograph's vision on our product. He's behind talking to a lot of you, gathering feedback. And so today he's really going to be walking through all those little details about how these features were designed and the best workflows for you to be able to use them in.
Thanks, excited to be here.
All right, and then some notes before we get started and I turn it over to Ashish. The best way to ask questions during the webinar is by using that Q&A button that is at the very bottom in the toolbar. I will be serving as the moderator at the end of his presentation. By using the Q&A box, that helps me be able to aggregate all the themes and all the questions that are similar and be more efficient with answering as many questions as possible. If you have comments or things that are not questions, you can, of course, use the chat box. You can use the chat box to let us know if you can't hear or there's any technical things on your side, and we will stop to adjust. And with that, we'll go over to Ashish.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, everyone. So I think, as Eileen mentioned, we're going to talk about two topics. First one is our time off feature. So we launched time off late last year. This is really cool. It was actually one of the most requested feature and the fastest adopted of my time or my experience as a product leader. So it was really cool to see how quickly everyone was started using it. But at the same time, of course, that meant that there are a lot of questions about some of the details and how it works. As reference, we're not going to do a full overview here. Hopefully, there's a variety of resources. You can always reach out to someone on your CX member to get details. But I am going to cover some of the kind of common areas that I think have led to either confusion or just clarity around how it all works. So these are the kind of four areas I'm going to cover here. And as Eileen mentioned at the end, we can do a Q&A in general if anything else comes up. But first, just an overview on how the whole thing kind of works, the basics. So things that have commonly been a question is, I have different employees that have different accrual rates, so part-time, full-time, first year, more tenured, that kind of thing. So I'll talk about that a little bit. How time offs and overheads work, and are they linked, and how does the reporting work, and things like that. As well as how do I handle company holidays. So I'm going to go through each of those one at a time. So first of all, I know a lot of people may not be kind of software engineers or that kind of thing, but I think this is a very simplistic version of this, but showing a little bit of how kind of the data models work and the business logic here is what I'm trying to intend here. So basically, I think there have been a lot of questions like, what is a time off policy and why are there multiple and what's going on here? So the basic idea here is that we have kind of two concepts. We have policies of a certain type, so something like vacation or sick time or jury duty or what have you, where any given employee can only have one of those for themselves. So you can only have one vacation. You can only be a part of one vacation policy or one sick time policy or one jury duty policy. But as an organization, you might have multiple of these policies to cover different use cases, right? So I think the most common, it's probably less common in the other types like sick leave or jury duty or things like that. But in particular with vacation or paid time off or whatever you want to refer to it as, it's very common that different employees might have different accrual rates. And by accrual rate, I mean like how much do you earn in hours per year. And so, for example, in this example, you have one employee who has vacation hours as well as sick hours. So he's a part of two different policies, but he's only a part of one of these two policies because he can only either earn 3 weeks a year of vacation or 2 weeks a year of vacation. And I'll talk a little bit more about how you might handle that in the next slide. But I just wanted to help clarify, because I think there have been questions around, okay, well, what are these multiple policies and what are the restrictions? So the main restriction is any person can only be a part of one type, but they can be a part of multiple. They can be a part of an individual policy from different types. And put your questions in the chat if any of that wasn't clear. Okay, so just diving in a little bit deeper on this accrual rate difference. So examples of this might be, in this example, you might have a policy for first-year employees. So when you first join your firm, you get 3 weeks of vacation. So that's 120 hours per year. But then after your 1-year anniversary, you might start accruing 4 weeks of vacation. So then you have a separate policy. So the way you'd set this up in Monograph is you'd set up two different policies, both of the type paid time off, I think it's referred to as, and set the accrual rates. I'm not giving all the details again. If you need that, there's a bunch of resources for that. But the main difference between these two policies in this example is the accrual rate. So I set this one to 120 hours a year and this one to 160. And I'll show you a demo of this in a second on just how that all looks. And then you can then assign your employees. So in this example, these two folks are first-year employees. And so you assign them to this policy. And this person might have longer tenure. And so they've been assigned to this policy. At their 1-year anniversary, if you want to move them from one to the other, you can do that in Monograph. I will say that at this moment, we don't have a transfer capability. So you would just unassign them from this policy and assign them to this. And when you set the starting balance, you can just use the current balance that they have right now. All of that's always available. So when you remove an employee from any given policy, the history is always there. And you can find that by going to the policy and clicking on that person, or just going to the team time off tab. I'll show this in a second, and clicking on that person. You can always see their history. So you can transfer them over. In the future, we might add some ability to kind of do that automatically for you. But for now, you would have to do that manually. And like I said, this example is first year versus, further on. Eventually, or other examples are you might have different accrual rates for part-time versus full-time, contractors, things like that. And I should say that not every employee needs to be a part of a policy if for some reason you just don't. I think maybe contractors or things like that, where maybe they don't have a particular type of policy. There's no requirement that everyone has one. And if you don't assign them to one, they won't see anything. In time off, it will just say, it'll just be an empty screen or just show the policies that they're a part of. Okay, that was a lot. I'm going to now go to the next thing, which is about time off and overheads. Okay, so I think it's pretty common. We've had a lot of questions like, why do I have to select an overhead to tie these time off policies together? The short answer is it's for reporting and to, especially for those of you that have been using Monograph before time off and we're basically putting hours in to an overhead category and want to move over. We wanted to make that all the reporting kind of seamless and line up. The other thing that allows you to do is kind of combine things that instead of having hours for every single different type of policy type, if you wanted to say, oh, these all just go into this bucket, you can do that by linking them. So basically what you do is whenever you create a policy, you choose an overhead category. So it could be an existing one or a new one if you'd like. And what it effectively does is within timesheets and staffing, all your pending and approved time off hours will show up in timesheets. You'll see a row for that overhead. And like I said, if it was using, if you're linked to an existing overhead where you had that happening already, once that employee starts accruing, so like there's a start date when you assign them to a policy, at that point forward, when they go into their timesheet, they will not be able to add manually into that overhead. So historically, you would select an overhead and add your hours there. They won't be able to do that anymore. And the reason for that is we want to prevent double counting. We know that some of you might have several employees, and telling them all just not to do this or changing their habits could be challenging. So we wanted to make it so we could kind of force that. We did have those of you that maybe started this in Q4. We had a lot of adjustments where we locked it down immediately, and then that was challenging. So we got to a place where now it doesn't lock until they start accruing. That way, you can keep using it. Especially like, let's say it's like December and you want to start using it on Jan 1, you can do that without any disruption. So that's how it works with timesheets. And with staffing, you'll see it's actually all bundled together for staffing under kind of overhead time off, because I think that granularity is less important there, but you can kind of see their capacity there. And then in terms of payroll, if you're a Monograph payroll user, shout out, those of you that might want to try that out. A relatively new feature that we're really excited about. But the real benefit in general, and the more tools that we're adding, is about helping you kind of easily migrate data back and forth between all of our different areas of the product and make that seamless. So if you're a Monograph payroll user, all your time off hours will populate in the paychecks when you go to run payroll. Currently that's actually even broken up by your sick hours will go into sick, and time off will go, all the rest of them will go into time off. When I'll talk about company holidays in a second, and those will also get broken out in Monograph payroll. And then for everyone, when you run your payroll report, we bucket, I mentioned this earlier, but the reason that we have these links is so we'll basically create a column in that report for your overhead, just as you had before. So if you link to an existing one, it can combine all the hours together. If you link multiple of these policies to one overhead, it just makes it all in one column. Makes it a little cleaner. Of course, if you want to have separate ones for each one, that's also fine. It's completely up to you and how you link it to the overhead. So yeah, that is a little bit of how that works. And to kind of mix this up and not make it so dry, I'm going to jump into this is a demo environment that I have. I just set this up last night. I don't like to do like super polished demos. So if something goes wrong, that's what will happen. But I wanted to make sure that I could touch on all these things. So in this case, I just added this person. This is an admin. This is kind of what they see for themselves. So they happen to be as part of two policies, a vacation one for first-year employees and a sick leave one. In one case, the reason that they have negative hours is because she requested some hours for next week, which I'll show you in a second, and those were approved, and so now her available hours are there. If anytime she wants to see how did that happen, she can always click on these hours here, and you can kind of see a history of everything that happened. So like I said, I did this last night. So I gave her a starting balance of 20 hours, and then she requested, and it was approved, a 40-hour leave. And so that's why she has negative 20 now. You can see how many hours she's accrued so far this year. And all of those things, they're all here. So for you as an admin, you can always see all of that for everybody if you go into two places. One, if you're looking at team time off, this will show all the requests. It has filtering here, but these are all the requests that have come in. And you can always click on this, as I mentioned earlier, and that will go right to that same spot that I was just showing. Or if you want it even easier, like let's say they didn't actually request it, you can always click on the policy. So, let me just quickly go through this. These are all the policies I set up. As I mentioned, I set up one for first-year employees, one for senior employees, and there are 3 people on this one and 1 on this one. And then for sick leave, everyone has the same policy, so I just assigned everyone to that. And as I mentioned before, not everyone has to be assigned if you don't want them to. So yeah, when you go into a policy, you can see all the details, how many hours they're accruing for this policy's description, et cetera. And you can also see each employee. And as I mentioned before, you can click here and see exactly the same screen that I was talking about before. So if you ever want to see how someone ended up somewhere, you can do that. You can also manually adjust their hours here. And, ideally you'd put a note here because of course, hours, time is money. So, changing their hours, hopefully you can keep a little bit of an audit trail there. So let's see, of course, I'm trying to avoid going completely, oh yeah, sorry. I did want to show you how this all kind of fits in other places. So this is her timesheet. If you remember, it was actually a request for next week. So I'm going to go to next week, and you will see that her approved hours are showing up here. And they're locked down. So as I mentioned before, she can no longer add the overhead that was assigned with this is paid time off, and then you see it's not here. And that's because she needs to use time off now going forward. And then in staffing, you will also see this account has a lot of projects, but that she's assigned to, but you will see that there are 40 hours in time off for this week, because that goes into the sum of her hours. So you can see that she's over allocated, quite obviously, because she's taking the whole week off. Cool. So I think those are the main things that I wanted to cover on that front. Again, keep the questions going, and I'm trying to go relatively quickly so that we'll have plenty of time for Q&A at the end. And then finally, company holidays. So another area that, frankly, in order to get this out quickly, we did not do this when we first launched, but now we are actually working on this as we speak. So this is a screenshot of some of the work that we're doing right now. So very specifically, today, we don't really handle company holidays particularly well, which are holidays where, everyone or several employees should get the time off. And so for today, probably the best suggestion would be to continue to do it the old way, where you put an overhead for that employee and just manually enter those days in. You could use time off, but then everyone has to request it and get approved, and it seems kind of a little bit laborious. So our suggestion would be to keep using overhead. But the good news is pretty soon we are going to have something like this where you can set up, we are going to allow you to set up multiple policies. And the reason for that is similar to vacation. You might want different policies for part-time or full-time, different hours that you might want associated with that. Some people might get some holidays in others, different countries, things like that. So we'll allow this. I suspect a lot of you will probably only have one holiday policy, but we did want to allow that flexibility in case. But it will work very similarly. We'll share more when this comes out, but you'll effectively be able to create days that are global and assign the right staff to those policies as well. So excited that that's coming, and I think that will help with one particular part of the workflow that I think is still pretty challenging, just candidly for the admins right now, especially for those of you at larger firms where it can be pretty cumbersome. So really excited about that. And hopefully that gives you a good sense of where time off's at. And I'm going to pause for a second. Eileen, it looks like you want to say something.
Yeah, sorry, I wanted to interrupt, but I didn't know quite when. So I know we had originally planned to do questions at the very end of the session, but we're doing pretty good with time. And since you have everything
Okay.
here for time off, I thought maybe I could ask you, we've got a lot of fantastic questions that have been merging together. And
Perfect.
there's a few that I'm seeing a theme with. And one of them is, let's see, is it possible to edit PTO that has been requested but has passed? It seems like there is a common use case where an employee might request time off. The date comes, perhaps there was a deadline, they didn't end up taking the day. And so they, maybe they only took 6 of the 8 hours they requested, or 4, or maybe none of that. So that is one question.
Yeah. So you can delete it as of right now, which was new. We didn't support that initially. So now you can delete it. You cannot edit it. So in that particular case, you have a few options. At least right now, I think it's a good request. Right now, you could delete it, which would give them back all their hours. Then potentially manually put in, to an overhead some amount, and then just manually edit their hours. You could also, just manually edit it for the future, and depending on how you want to do it. So yeah, right now, unfortunately, deleting is supported, but not changing the number of, they're changing the amount.
Okay, understood. I'll ask you one more, I think, before we move on. This other question was, how are my employees able to view what they have requested off like their own time off usage?
Yeah, so like I think I mentioned this, but in general, you can. So this is the screen that an employee would see. So this happens to be an admin, but this is for their own time. So they can see here very quickly how many hours are available to them, which is I think the most important piece of information is how many more can you take, right? But if you actually wanted to see more detail, you can always click on the view history, and that will show you how much you've accrued this year so far, how much you have planned, how much you've taken, and then basically hours available is this minus this, right? So, and then you can also see a log of your entire history here. So this is all available both. This same view is available to any given employee, as well as admins can look at this. And by the way, I showed a different place to do this, but as an admin, if for some reason you want to edit their hours, you can also do it here, just for convenience. But it's the same idea. You can add or subtract hours.
Awesome. I have one more because I think we have time before we get to the half-hour mark.
Yep.
The question was, how do you handle prorated PTO or sick time for someone that is starting mid-year?
Yes. So when you add a new person to, when you add a new person to any policy, I will pick Christina. You can start it at any balance you want, and also start the accrual at any time. So, wow, that was fun. So let's say Christina, either you want her to get 4 hours initially because you're moving over from another system, or this is maybe you don't want to start till February 1 because that's when you're gonna just move everyone over. You can set that to that date, and then set the balance to whatever you want. And so you can, like I said, that's independent for every employee. So anytime you add someone, that's how you do it. And then, as I mentioned before, the method by which, like, let's say they graduated out of this policy and went to the next, you would effectively remove them from this one, and then add them to the next with the starting balance that they had from the previous one. So that's kind of the idea of how that would work.
Perfect, thank you. There are a lot more questions that have been submitted that I am grouping. I do want to give Ashish time to move on to monthly staffing so we can also go through those steps. One thing that I promise to everyone that's here is I will make sure that all these questions, even if we don't answer them during this, either get added to our support documentation or we'll send it in the follow-up with the link. So don't feel that if you don't hear your question answered, it went into the void. I'm seeing it. Just want to give time for conversation.
Yes. For sure. And I know there's a lot, and a lot of different workflows there. And we hope that to be able to support most of them, but there are going to definitely be ones that don't quite work, and we'll try to help you figure out the best way. Cool. So the next area, we were really excited to really focus in last quarter. I probably should mention that my philosophy is very much to focus on a couple key areas and go pretty deep every quarter, and not go too broad, and because I think that doesn't lead to good solutions. So monthly staffing is one where we really were finding that the weekly staffing was causing a lot of confusion. There were a lot of, internally, we referred to this as the double planner problem, where people didn't understand how do hours that come from project planner end up in staffing and things of that nature. And so we really took a second to take a step back and reapproach how this all works. And I want to give you a little bit of an overview. I'm really excited about this. I think everyone's going to be able to forecast much better in the future, as well as just even manage this week better, hopefully by using this kind of workflow that we're suggesting. So I'm going to talk a little bit about just, first of all, how all these hours on Monograph work. What are they for? Why would you use them? How do they connect? Then I'll talk you through what we recommend as a workflow, not just in using monthly staffing, but just in general, how you think about kind of your cadence of staying on time, on track, et cetera. Then I will talk a little bit about, as I mentioned, how does project planner and staffing work together? And then finally, I'll talk a little bit about weekly staffing, which I think probably most of you use very regularly. And if you get one takeaway from this, I really hope you'll try to use monthly staffing as your primary method and weekly staffing as your small kind of adjustment method. But we can talk more about that in a second. Okay, so first, let me talk you through how we at Monograph think about all the hours that exist on the platform. And I totally get that there are a lot, and it's hopefully, if we all can align on this, this will help you be really successful and kind of keep you profitable, right? So that's how I've even positioned this as, honestly, the whole reason to do all this is to ensure that you're profitable, or at least like hit the goals that you have around profitability. And so the overall goal here is we want the log time, which is the actual number of hours that you work so far in the past, right? Plus the staff time, which are the future hours that you plan to work. I think you can see my mouse, I hope. I think, Eileen, you told me you can.
Yep, you can.
Yeah. Okay, great. So the staffed hours are the future hours that you have. So like very simply, the logged hours and the staffed hours should be less than or equal to your planned hours, right? Because that means that you're either doing as well as you planned or better, in terms of, at least from an efficiency standpoint, right? And so when you think about planned hours, what do those actually represent? And I know a lot of people use it in a different way, and I think that's fine. But the way that I think about it, and the way that we are hoping to impart you think about it, is these are kind of the ideal number of hours that you spend to meet your profitability targets, right? So you have a contract, you're going to charge, at least for a fixed fee, I should say, you're gonna charge your client a certain amount for that phase. Well, in order for you to be profitable, you need to get it so that your planned hours for all the people that you're working at their rates adds up to that number, right? Because their rates should have your profitability built into them. So you certainly don't want to exceed that. Maybe it's good to go to get well under that. That's up to you. But ultimately, what we're going to do is help you ensure that you have very good visibility on this equation here. So that's what we've done here. And I'll show you this as an example, because this could be a little dry, but hopefully this is a little more clear on like how all these hours work and what they're for. Let me walk you through how I would recommend using our new tools. Or some of them are existing and some of them are new, such that you can kind of keep that equation going, right? So basically, what you're doing here, I would recommend doing this maybe once a week, or more often if you'd like. But before you go and look at your staffing, you should just ensure that all your project planner information is up to date. So what do I mean by that? That you've assigned employees to the phases and set the number of hours that you're hoping for. One small thing here, when you first do this, hitting done, I'll talk about this later. We did need to find a time where we could trigger when we would automatically put hours into staffing, which I'll talk about in a second. So right now it's when you hit that done button. So don't forget to hit it. Technically, everything works if you don't hit it, but it'd be nice. So just get in that habit. And so doing that, and then updating your timelines. And I'll talk about this in a second, but now we made it so when you move your timelines around, which is obviously very common, the hours will move with them. So hopefully that will kind of cut down on a lot of your work. So then once you've done that and your plans are accurate, you can go to monthly staffing, and I'll show you this in a second, and you look for all the rows. A row is basically under every person, there's a row for every phase that they're associated with, that they're assigned to, I should say, and how they're doing against that. So what it's going to show you is, given your plans and given how many hours have been logged so far, look at the future staffed hours. Is that adding up to 100%? If it is over 100%, that means you are on track to go over your plan. If it's under, maybe that's okay for you. Again, that's up to you. But ultimately, that will help you figure out how you're tracking. And any given week, you may have logged the hours that you thought you were going to. You may have logged more, you may have logged less. This will give you a constant view of like, how are you doing? So you can check in on this as often as you like. And then once you've done that, and so you can look at those, and any that aren't at 100%, you can check and say, okay, how do I fix this? And I'll show you this in a second. You can either just manually fix it by changing the numbers, or you can use our new Rebalance button, which I'm really excited about, which will help you get that row to 100% or as close as possible. There's some rounding, of course. And then once you've done that, now you can scan all the columns, and you can, I alluded to this earlier, but you can look at any given person and say, oh, in this week, the plan, or I shouldn't use the term plan, the staffed hours are showing that this person is going to be over capacity or under capacity. And we've also now added that at a team level. So you can see everyone in your organization as a whole, are they over capacity or under capacity? So this will really help you figure out if you have people that are underbooked or overbooked, if you need more work, especially far into the future. Our whole goal here is we want you to be able to look much further in the future. And that's why weekly staffing wasn't particularly useful for that, or it's a very cumbersome way to do that. And so that brings me to the last thing, which is you can, if you still feel like the view of weekly staffing or the filtering or being able to like kind of show that to your team is more useful because it is very zoomed in, certainly you should do that. But I would suggest that the major changes to hours and kind of general plans is happening in monthly, and then you go to weekly to do small edits. So I just talked a lot, and it was probably a little hard to follow. So I'm going to show you what I mean here. So we're going to go to staffing, and like I said, monthly is where it's at. So we added a few new things here, well, at least over the last month or two, that you may or may not be aware of. So initially, before December-ish, we did not have any ability to filter this list. So you could see, I have a firm of 30 people here. This new line here is showing the capacity of all of the people across in my org. And this uses their compensation hours to figure that out. So if you have some part-time people or full-time people, that figures that out. And you can hover over it, and you can see that I have 810 hours that are staffed here out of a total 1160. So maybe I have some capacity to do some more work. And especially in the future, it's like, oh wow, I think I'll need more work in order to make sure everyone's busy. And on the flip side, I can look at any particular person and say, oh wow, this person's way over. What's happening here? I'm going to filter to Naomi just because I've been using her previously. And so I can filter to her. And then, by the way, you'll notice here that this team line will now just reflect the people that are filtered. So think about if you're or someone on your team is a PM that's only responsible for a handful of people, they can just select those people and only look at them. And then they can also see the capacity of that. So like, what's my team looking like? Okay, oh wow, my team's over capacity here. What's going on? I can go look in that particular person and see what's happening. And so I'm going to go to Naomi, as I mentioned. And so when you open up Naomi, you can see every project that she has been assigned to, whether there are actual hours or not. So in some cases, there are no hours planned. That makes this less useful. So as I mentioned before, let's try to put those planned hours in, but it's not required. But for those that are planned, you can see these percentages. And so what this is telling us is effectively how many logged hours have happened already in previous weeks, how many are planned for the future, i.e. staffed, and then how is that comparing to your planned hours? And so this is basically saying, okay, cool, within a very small margin, half an hour, I am on track. And so just to help clarify, I'm going to change these all to different numbers. And you'll see that this percentage changes. So now you can see like, oh yeah, I am actually understaffed by 5.5 hours. So maybe that's good, but maybe I'm actually like, no, that doesn't seem right. I do want to get this back. So then I can hit this rebalance button. This rebalance button will allow you to now set all of there's two options. Basically, I can overwrite everything that I've done in the future, just fix it, make it all evenly spread across the rest of the phase every week. Or I can say, well, actually, I manually edited a few of these weeks on purpose because this person only has this much time or whatever. And so actually, of all the ones that I haven't edited, can you just take the rest of the time and spread it out across that? So that's what I'm going to do here. And so now you see I got to 100%, even though, I don't have any time for her this week, but I was able to kind of ramp it up there. So that's the idea here that, again, like maybe the first time you're doing this, it could be a little onerous because there could be a lot of rows, but over time, if you get into this workflow, there should be very few, hopefully, that you're looking at where things are off track. And those are the ones where you may want to kind of dig in. And like in this particular case, this person Naomi has already logged more time here than was planned in this. So that's overstaffed. There's nothing we can do from a rebalancing standpoint, right? Because you've already gone over. But if for some reason, maybe this plan was wrong or something, you can always go back into the planner. So now I'm going to, just as an example, show you. So this is the DD phase for Naomi on Barrister Lake. I'm going to go back into that one and move my hours into the future because I have determined that Naomi needs, or for whatever reason, but let's just say that, that Naomi has too much on her plate, and we just need to move this out. So I'm going to edit this DD phase, and that's okay for now, because this is a test account, so no big deal. I'm just going to move it, let's say, several weeks into the future. Okay, so one thing, this is a little bit in the weeds, but if you change the duration of the phase, then of course, we are going to have to cut off the hours that were stored. I'm just going to make sure the duration's the same, so we don't have to get into that. But basically what this is going to do, you'll see in a second, is move all those hours that I had created and showed you and move them out into the future. So they should be in the week of February 22nd. Doing this live, so you never know what happens. Go back to Naomi, DD. Yeah, so you'll see that now those hours, if you remember, were over here, and now they're out here. So this was something that definitely wasn't happening before. So those of you that had used the staffing tool before, I think it was pretty painful. You change all these things and have to use it, and now all of that stuff is handled for you. Okay. I think those are the main things that I wanted to kind of quickly show you. Okay. questions that often come up, and I think I touched on some of this now, is how do project planner hours and staffing hours work with one another? So, again, hopefully now you understand why they're different. One is about figuring out the future plans, and one is about your ideal numbers to get you to profitability. And so there is kind of a few different things that can happen in Project Planner that has an impact. So number one, I mentioned this before, but when you first assign hours to a person in Planner, as long as you hit done, it will effectively do the same thing as that rebalance button, but it will do it initially. So the whole goal of this over time is, as you're adding new projects, adding new people, you won't actually have to do anything. All of these staffing hours will by default be there. And then all you have to do is tweak them from there, or make these changes when things happen. So, you won't actually have to, eventually there will be a lot less work for everyone. Okay, now that's for the initial assignment. Now, if you change the hours in Planner, we actually are not going, we made the call not to automatically make changes in staffing. The reason for that is, there are lots of different reasons why you may want to change the amount of hours, and we don't want to make a presumption about what you want to happen in staffing, but rather allow you to make those calls. What we hope, though, is if you make those changes, is you can go to staffing and very quickly identify, again, using the percentages, which of these phases are off, and you can either use the rebalance button if you like, or just change them yourself. So we recognize that there will be, a little bit more work here, but I think rather than assuming what you want there, I'm hoping that trade-off is worth it. But when you do change timelines, as I just demoed, it will actually move your hours. We think that is good. One kind of subtlety there is we are now also only allowing you to put hours in during the timeline of your phase. Before, it was pretty open-ended. That led to a lot of confusion and a lot of challenges with the data. So now you have to make sure that you can only basically allocate time during the timeline of the phase, which I think is good. Does mean that maybe you might have to edit the timeline on occasion. But it also allows us to do this thing where if you're moving your deadlines around or moving your timelines around, we can move the hours with them. So no work needed on that front. Okay, cool. So how does the weekly staffing go? Okay, as I mentioned before, I'm really hoping that most of your kind of heavy lifting is happening in monthly staffing now, because of just being able to see everything, see when you're on track, make all those adjustments, see your capacity. I think it's going to be a very powerful tool. And when you're in weekly staffing, you may still, I think it's very reasonable. I know I've joined some of your, maybe not the people on this call, but a few people's weekly staffing meetings in person. It's been really enlightening. And being able to see, everything in weekly staffing, like see everything that everyone's working on for a given week, I think makes a lot of sense. However, things like this update schedule button were causing a lot of challenges because of a lot of the issues that I brought up earlier, and just being able to see 1 week at a time is very challenging to understand. So I understand this might be disruptive, but we do believe at Monograph to simplify the product. And so we are going to be removing this button starting soon, I think by the end of this month, effectively. But like I said, the new way is way better. I am happy to help anyone that is trying to adjust to this new method, because I believe that in the long run, this will end up being a lot less work, a lot more intuitive, much clearer. And I'll just quickly show you, I guess one thing I should mention, oh, whoops, sorry, wrong one. One thing I should mention is the weekly staffing is just a zoomed in view, that everything you see here in this row is the same thing you see here. So I just want to make sure that's clear. Under the hood, this is all the same data. It's just being displayed in a different way. So you can very easily do all your work in monthly and come here and be confident. I'll show Naomi since that was the person I was working on, but those are the same things that she was working on, and I think I moved her into February. These are those DD hours that I was talking about. They're all here, right? So whenever you want to view just a given week at a time and see your whole team and how they viewed that, I think that's what weekly is for. But for all the kind of hard, heavy lifting, I would do that all here. Cool. Hopefully, I have not belabored that point over and over too many times, but I'm very hopeful. And just as a preview, because of all this, we do plan on making this the new default. We will be updating the names of these tabs to be more clear that this is about forecasting and this is about, or like availability, and this is about kind of this current week. But yeah, that's coming soon as well. Okay, I will stop there.
Right.
Allow
Thank you.
Eileen to let me know what we want to talk about.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Ashish, for going through all of that. And thanks for everyone that's been submitting the questions. There's been a lot of fantastic things. I've been trying to answer any that I could via text, so that way we can get those answered to you as soon as possible. A lot of you have also had great feature requests, so I've replied to those as well. We'll make sure to get the transcript from this call, and anything that is a feature request, I'll make sure to log it into our system, Canny, which is where we do any upvotes or anything like that. Ashish, I have a few questions for you on monthly, and then a few more came in around time off. So then I'll hop back.
Sounds good.
So the first one is monthly staffing only useful if a project is fixed fee, or does it also work for hourly projects?
Yes, good question. So I'd say maybe if we went back here, I think it's most useful anytime you have a good sense of how many hours you would like your employees to work on a given phase. Is that most useful and fixed? Probably. And by the way, I am not I don't come from an architectural background, so and I've been here 6 months, so I think I've learned a lot, but I don't know everything. So I would say, like, yeah, if you have an hourly phase where it's just kind of infinite and they can use as much time as they want, then it may or may not be useful. That being said, we're pretty soon going to add a feature on monthly where you can put an amount in and just drag and drop and put the same thing. So for example, if you were just going to say, like, I want Naomi to work 10 hours a week for forever or for a really long time, we're going to make that a little easier versus using the rebalance. But I would say that even if let's say you had a max cap or something like that, it might make sense for you to put in your planner those amount of hours so that you are sure that they don't exceed that. So that would be the way that I would use it for hourly phases.
Okay, thank you. Speaking of the planner, we just had a question come in, which is, how does the monthly staffing work if we haven't been putting hours into the planner?
Short answer is it doesn't.
Okay.
I'd love to. Well, I mean, not that it doesn't, but it's a lot less useful, right? So, for example, I think I showed a few people or a few phases. Like, there's no hours here. I mean, you can certainly, just put 7 hours or what have you, and you can use it kind of the same way that you might be just for general understanding of what people are working on. You're absolutely, like, you should do that if that makes sense. And like in the last question, if for some reason hourly phases, it doesn't really make sense to have planner hours, that's fine. I would highly recommend using the planner hours as a method to just kind of keep you on track and like have a goalpost that you're working towards. So like I said, even if it's not for technically what you're showing to clients or things like that, I would recommend using it because I think it will just make this a lot easier and more useful. But if you don't put anything in, then this will just kind of be blank and you can just manually handle that.
All right. This is one that has been a theme. We've had several questions come in around this. So I think that it was best asked here, which is, how do you create or assign like a general office allocation to every employee? So the example they gave was like they do a weekly office meeting, right? There is a requirement for all staff. So there is a portion of time during the week that is used for that? And so like how might you be able to forecast that into like your monthly capacity?
Good question. Thinking about, okay, so there are a few different things that come to mind. You could potentially, that's probably not a good idea. So probably the simplest would be to adjust people's compensation hours. If it's the same fixed time every week, like, so let's say they work 40 hours a week, but 2.5 hours, you have kind of a standard meeting. You could change their hours to represent 37.5 hours a week, and then everyone's capacity that's shown here um, upon a hover would, instead of saying 40, would say 37.5. That's one method. I'm trying to think.
There's one more method that actually
Yeah,
someone,
Eileen, if you
Luke,
haven't.
thank you suggesting. Yeah. Another one that we suggest is creating a project that is for administrative
Right.
tasks. And so that you can call it, just like office or, meetings, you just know something internally. And then you assign in the planner every single member of your team. You don't have to assign them hours, but at least the project exists there. Another common one that we see is like marketing, right? Like some teams do a lot of marketing work, awards, stuff like that. So they create a separate project. It helps you to track the time. It'll appear in their timesheet so they can log that time to the timesheet. And then you also have like that history and it appears here.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, do what Eileen says.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, yeah, overheads are another option, but then I think the project one probably feels like a good solution.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of folks from the chat that do that as well. So that's good. Good validation to know as well. Perfect. Let me see. There was one more that I thought was really good. All right, this one is a quick one to answer. But can you confirm the relationship between weekly or monthly staffing and timesheets? Does that connect over? I want to make sure that I'm telling my team the right information.
Yes, good question. So weekly and monthly staffing, as I mentioned, these hours are like behind the scenes, these are the exact same hours. So you can think of weekly and monthly as just different views, where monthly allows you to see many weeks at a time, whereas weekly just allows you to see 1 week at a time. And so it's kind of I think of it as more like a zoomed in view. In terms of timesheets, the main thing that happens on a timesheet is you will see these numbers here. They represent what you've put in staffing. And so the idea is for your team members, if they were to go into their timesheet, they could see how many hours they were effectively supposed to work, or at least like according to the staffing plan, what they were supposed to work for the week. So you could use it as a method. If you have high compliance of your employees looking at their timesheets at the beginning of the week, I'm not sure that that's very common, but maybe it is. This could be a way that they could see what they're intended to work on. So that's the main thing with timesheets. And then and just maybe to reiterate, in terms of in monthly staffing, you can see all those numbers all together in any given, hovering over any of these, where you can see the logged hours, which are the timesheet hours from the past, the staffed hours, which are all the things you see here in front of you, and the planned hours, which are coming from Planner. So you can kind of see those all at a glance for any given person and role.
Fantastic. I have one more question on staffing and then a last one for time off. So the staffing question is, does the staffing account for the utilization rate target by individual, by person?
No. Well, it depends on what you mean by account for. So this will tell you the total hours. So this denominator here is their compensation. It comes from their compensation. So you say their salary, or if they're hourly, their rate, and how many hours they work per week. So this uses that as the total. And the reason for that is because overheads are actually included in here. So so this includes things that, like, the utilization rate is meant to say how many are you working on build hours and things like that. This actually includes basically all the hours that they've worked, that you're planning on having them work in these columns, and that's why this shows the total, not it's not related to the utilization, or not directly.
And the final question with the time that we have left, this one goes back to time off. This is about setting up parental leave policies. And so the question is there anything different that I need to do when setting up a parental leave policy, since that is not time that is accrued the same way that like typical PTO time is, and is just based on, we provided for a team member. How do we set that up?
Yeah, so there are a few different things depending on if it's not accrued. You can, there's an unlimited time like an unlimited type of accrual. So effectively, if the main reason that you want to use it is just for tracking purposes and not put like a limit on it, you can just use the unlimited. So that's one option. You can also, if it doesn't accrue, but there's some fixed amount, so like you're going to give them 6 weeks or something, you can just manually add them. You can effectively put like no accrual, 0 hours per year, and just manually add to their balance. Those are probably the main two options that I would suggest. You could do an annual amount. No, I think it's probably one or the other. Feels like the best way to kind of handle that.
All right. Well, there's still lots of questions. I could probably keep peppering Ashish for the next hour on questions. We will run out of time, of course. So, like I said, I promised to everyone, if you submitted a question in the chat, just take a quick moment to copy and paste it into the Q&A, because Zoom lets me export the Q&A list. So that's the best way for me to be able to track the questions, know who we answered, and then be able to send those answers back out to you. There is just a few less items that we'll share on the next slide with the 2 minutes that we have. So this is last but not least, you can always continue to learn about these features on support.monograph.com. This is our knowledge base. It is full of tutorials, guidelines. A lot of these questions that you submitted today will become content that we add to enrich those articles so it is searchable for you and for your team members. You can also always see what is new in the app directly from within what's new. And I realize I went around the wrong box, but it has that little bell. It will have a little icon that will show you. You can see all the notes, all the documentation. That's a great way to keep up with the things that we are releasing. You can, of course, reach out to our team. We're always available. Our support team is fantastic. They're always happy to hear from customers, and they'll get back to you as quickly as they can. And last but not least, we will be sending a recording out of this webinar so that you can have it. You can share it with your team members. And I think that is everything. We had so much participation. Thank you all for the questions. It was really fantastic. And Ashish as well for leading us through all this content.
Yeah, thank you all. I know these are pretty meaty topics, and I hopefully was able to cover a lot, but yeah, looking forward to reading through all the questions and trying to make sure we get them answered.
Thanks for watching. This video covered 2 new features built exclusively for AE firms: time off and monthly staffing. With time off, you can request, accrue, track, and manage paid time off in Monograph. In monthly staffing, you can forecast staffing issues weeks ahead fast and rebalance hours where needed. Click the links in the video description or scan these QR codes with your phone to learn more about each new feature.